They say that inside Buckingham Palace, the walls don't simply hear conversations, they remember them. Every whispered secret, every hidden conflict, every carefully buried truth lingers within those historic corridors. For decades, the British monarchy has mastered the art of survival, not just through tradition and ceremony, but through its ability to protect its image at all costs. Behind the polished public facade lies a far more complicated reality, one that has been carefully concealed behind layers of protocol, silence, and control. But in 2026, something has changed. The carefully sealed doors that once protected the monarchy's most sensitive secrets are beginning to crack open. Over the past few years, the world has witnessed a steady unraveling. Explosive interviews, controversial memoirs, public family feuds, and dramatic departures that have shaken the institution to its core. Each event chipped away at the royal image, revealing glimpses of tension beneath the surface. Yet even after all of that, nothing has prepared the public for the magnitude of what is now emerging. Because this time, it's different. This isn't just another rumor or fleeting scandal. It's a claim so powerful that it threatens to rewrite one of the most iconic modern royal narratives, the story of how Meghan Markle entered the royal family. A story that has long been presented as a fairy tale. An American actress meets a British prince, falls in love, and becomes part of one of the most famous institutions in the world. But what if that story wasn't as simple as it seemed? What if there was another version, one that had been carefully hidden from the public eye? And what makes this revelation even more shocking is not just the claim itself, but where it allegedly comes from. Not from anonymous insiders, not from sensationalist tabloids, but from someone who once stood at the very center of royal life. Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, has long been one of the most fascinating figures connected to the royal family. Known for her loyalty, her controversies, and her unique position within the monarchy, she has spent decades walking the fine line between insider and outsider. She has seen the system from within, understood its rules, its pressures, and its secrets. And now, according to reports circulating in 2026, she may have decided to speak. What she has allegedly revealed has sent shockwaves through royal circles and beyond. It's the kind of claim that doesn't just spark headlines, it changes conversations entirely. At the heart of it is a deeply controversial allegation that long before Meghan Markle became the Duchess of Sussex, her life may have intersected with Prince Andrew during a period of his history that has remained under intense scrutiny for years. This isn't framed as casual speculation. It's presented as a direct and unsettling connection between two individuals who have both become central figures in ongoing public debate. And that is what makes this moment so explosive. For over a decade, Prince Andrew's name has been associated with a series of controversies tied to elite social circles, exclusive gatherings often described as private, high-profile, and shrouded in secrecy. These so-called yacht days have lingered in public discussion, surrounded by rumors, unanswered questions, and speculation that never fully disappeared. But until now, Meghan Markle had never been directly connected to that world. That is the turning point. Because once that connection is introduced, even as an allegation, it forces a complete reevaluation of everything that followed. It raises questions that many people are now beginning to ask openly. Could this explain the tension that has long existed between Prince Harry and certain members of his family? The visible discomfort, the emotional distance, the sense that something deeper has always been unresolved? Or is this something else entirely? A calculated move, a strategic revelation, a moment chosen carefully at a time when the royal family is already under immense pressure. To understand why this claim is surfacing now, we need to go back, years before Meghan Markle ever became part of the royal spotlight, back to 2013. At the time, the world had no idea that Meghan Markle would one day become one of the most talked about women in the world. She was building her career, known primarily for her role in the television series Suits, navigating the demanding worlds of Hollywood and high-profile social circles. But within the royal family, something else was happening. rumors began to circulate, quietly, discreetly, about a serious confrontation between Prince Harry and his uncle, Prince Andrew. The details were never confirmed. Some accounts described a heated argument that escalated into shouting. Others suggested that it went further into physical contact, a shove, perhaps even a punch. And then, just as quickly as the rumors appeared, they disappeared. The palace moved swiftly, efficiently, silently. No statements, no explanations, no acknowledgement. The story was buried. For years, it remained nothing more than a forgotten whisper, a piece of royal gossip that never fully surfaced. But now, in light of recent developments, that moment is being looked at in an entirely different way, because people are asking a new question. What were they really fighting about? Was it simply a clash of personalities? Or was it something deeper, something connected to knowledge, to discovery, to a truth that one of them could not ignore? If Prince Harry had learned something about his uncle's world, something he found unacceptable, it would explain the intensity of that confrontation. And if that something is now being linked, even indirectly, to Meghan Markle, the implications become far more serious. Because suddenly, the timeline begins to shift. Back in 2013, Meghan Markle was already moving within influential social circles. Cities like Toronto, London, and even parts of Europe placed her in proximity to networks that extended far beyond the entertainment industry. These were spaces where business leaders, celebrities, and powerful figures often intersected. If her path had crossed with circles connected to Prince Andrew during that time, it challenges the simplicity of the narrative that was later presented to the public. The official story is well known. In 2016, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry were introduced on a blind date in London. Two strangers meeting for the first time, discovering a connection that would eventually lead to marriage. It was presented as spontaneous, genuine, almost storybook-like. But if earlier connections existed, that version of events becomes far more complicated. According to the claims now being discussed, Meghan may not have been entirely unfamiliar with royal-adjacent circles when she met Harry. Instead, she may have already been aware of the world she was stepping into, its people, its dynamics, and perhaps even its hidden complexities. And if that is true, it changes everything, because it suggests that what the public saw as a beginning may not have been a beginning at all. It may have been a continuation of something that started long before. At the same time, Sarah Ferguson's own situation in 2026 adds another layer to the story. Reports indicate that she and Prince Andrew are facing significant changes, financial pressures, potential loss of residence, and a gradual distancing from the core of the monarchy. After years of maintaining loyalty, she now finds herself in a position where silence may no longer serve her interests, and that changes the equation, because when someone with insider knowledge feels they have nothing left to lose, the potential for revelation increases dramatically. When Ferguson reportedly used the phrase first client, it immediately drew attention, not just because of what it implied, but because of how specific it sounded. In the context of Prince Andrew's past, those words carry a weight that goes far beyond casual association. They suggest structure, role, participation. For years, discussions about the so-called yacht world were often dismissed as speculation, stories built on unclear evidence and assumptions. But this alleged claim shifts the focus away from vague imagery and towards something more concrete: involvement within a system of elite social interactions. At the same time, attention has turned to the networks that connect influential figures globally. Private members' clubs, exclusive gatherings, carefully curated environments where powerful individuals meet away from public scrutiny. Names like Marcus Anderson and organizations such as Soho House frequently appear in these discussions. These networks are known for bringing together individuals from entertainment, business, and high society, creating spaces where connections are formed quietly but powerfully. If Meghan Markle was part of these environments during her early career, it would not be unusual. Many rising figures in entertainment move within similar circles. But if those circles overlapped with networks linked to Prince Andrew, it introduces a far more complex narrative. It suggests that when Meghan eventually met Prince Harry, she may have already had insight into the world he belonged to, not as an outsider, but as someone who had seen parts of it before. And if Harry was aware of any of this, it could explain not only past tensions, but also the intensity of his decisions in the years that followed. Because this is no longer just about who knew what. It's about how much was hidden and why. And as the story continues to unfold in 2026, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The narrative that once seemed simple is now anything but. As the narrative begins to unravel, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. The timeline no longer fits as neatly as it once did. What was previously accepted as a simple sequence of events is now being re-examined under a far more critical lens. And with every new detail that surfaces, the gaps in the official story become harder to overlook. One of the most significant moments now under scrutiny is a high-profile wedding that took place in Jamaica in 2017. At the time, it seemed like nothing more than an elegant gathering of wealthy and well-connected individuals. The event attracted attention, but not suspicion. It was simply another occasion where members of elite circles crossed paths in a setting defined by luxury and exclusivity. But looking back from the perspective of 2026, that same event is being viewed in a completely different light, because the guest list tells a story. Among those present were Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, still early in their relationship, but already drawing attention as a couple. Also in attendance were Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, figures whose presence now carries far more weight given the current allegations. At the time, their shared attendance did not raise eyebrows. But now, it is being reconsidered as a moment where multiple narratives may have quietly intersected. What once appeared to be coincidence now feels far more deliberate. Observers are beginning to question whether this event represents a deeper connection between the Sussexes and the Yorks, one that predates the public version of events. If Meghan Markle had already been familiar with certain social networks linked to Prince Andrew, then this gathering was not just a random overlap. It may have been part of a much longer, more intricate web of associations, and this is where the narrative begins to shift from curiosity to concern. Because the royal family, more than any other institution, depends on consistency. Its image is built on carefully controlled storytelling, on presenting a version of reality that reinforces tradition, stability, and trust. When that narrative is challenged, even slightly, it creates ripples. But when it is fundamentally questioned, the impact can be far more severe. The story of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle has always been presented as modern, authentic, and refreshingly different. It was framed as a departure from rigid tradition, a love story that transcended expectations and brought a new dimension to the monarchy. But if elements of that story were constructed or selectively presented, it raises uncomfortable questions. Why was the blind date narrative emphasized so strongly? Why was there such a focus on Meghan's unfamiliarity with royal life? And most importantly, what, if anything, was left out? According to the claims now circulating, Sarah Ferguson may be suggesting that the official version of how Harry and Meghan met was carefully designed for public consumption. A simplified story, a controlled narrative, one that would resonate globally while avoiding any complexities that might raise questions. If that is true, it points to a broader pattern within the royal institution, the strategic shaping of perception. But Ferguson's alleged motivations cannot be ignored. For decades, she maintained a complicated but largely loyal relationship with the royal family. Even after her divorce from Prince Andrew, she remained connected, often defending him during periods of intense public scrutiny. She endured criticism, financial challenges, and personal setbacks, yet continued to align herself with the institution. So why speak now? The answer may lie in the shifting dynamics of 2026. Reports suggest that King Charles is moving forward with plans to streamline the monarchy, reducing its size, limiting financial support, and redefining who remains within the inner circle. As part of this shift, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson are reportedly facing increasing pressure, both financially and socially. The potential loss of Royal Lodge, a residence tied closely to their lives, represents more than just a change of address. It symbolizes a broader separation, a distancing from the core of royal life. And with that distancing comes vulnerability. For someone like Sarah Ferguson, who has faced financial difficulties in the past, this situation may represent a turning point. The stability once provided by royal association is no longer guaranteed. The safety net is weakening. In such circumstances, information becomes power. Reports have begun to circulate that Ferguson may be working on a memoir, one that could command a staggering price due to its potential revelations. But this is not just a personal story. According to speculation, it may include details about the inner workings of the York family and the broader royal network. And at the center of that story may be the connections now being discussed. If true, this transforms Ferguson's position entirely. She is no longer just a former royal figure navigating personal challenges. She becomes a gatekeeper of information, someone who holds pieces of a narrative that others would prefer to keep hidden. And that makes her incredibly powerful. The alleged reference to Meghan Markle as a first client fits into this dynamic. Whether interpreted literally or metaphorically, it introduces a concept that demands attention. It suggests involvement in a system of introductions, relationships, and interactions that operate far beyond public visibility. For years, the so-called yacht narrative existed on the fringes of discussion, often dismissed due to lack of clear evidence. Critics argued that it relied too heavily on assumptions, blurred images, and speculation. But the current situation is different, because now the conversation is not being driven solely by external observers. It is being influenced, at least in part, by someone who is inside the system. And that changes everything. At the same time, attention continues to focus on the broader networks that connect influential individuals globally. Private clubs, exclusive events, and curated environments have long served as meeting points for those operating at the highest levels of society. Soho House, in particular, has been mentioned repeatedly in discussions about elite social connections. Known for its discreet atmosphere and carefully selected membership, it has become a hub where figures from entertainment, business, and royalty intersect. Marcus Anderson, a key figure associated with Soho House, has often been described as a connector, someone who facilitates introductions and fosters relationships within these circles. If Meghan Markle was part of this environment during her rise in the entertainment industry, it would place her within a network that overlaps with many powerful individuals, including those linked to royal circles. This does not, in itself, confirm any allegations, but it does provide context. It shows how seemingly separate worlds, Hollywood, high society, and royalty, can intersect in ways that are not immediately visible to the public. And when those intersections are revisited years later, they can take on entirely new significance. For Prince Harry, this evolving narrative presents a deeply personal challenge. Since stepping away from royal duties, he has consistently positioned himself as a protector, someone who sought to shield his wife from what he described as a toxic environment within the UK. His decisions, though controversial, were framed as acts of loyalty and love. But if aspects of Meghan's past connect to the very world he sought to distance himself from, it complicates that narrative. It introduces the possibility that the situation is not as clear-cut as it once appeared. And it raises a difficult question. How much did Harry know? If he was aware of any prior connections,